Welcome, everybody, to Make It Make Sense. I'm your host, Monique Pressley. Thanks so much for joining, where we try to do each and every day exactly what the title says. Make it make sense. Take the things that are complicated, the areas that are confusing, where you may need some clarity, where information and data would help you, or when we could bring in an expert, phone a friend, to give us the facts, the data, the expert opinion and analysis that we need. If you don't know it, this month is Autism Awareness, Inclusion, Acceptance Month. It is a month that is set aside to acknowledge that 1 in 31 children in the United States are on the autism spectrum. That's millions of children, and 1 in 45 adults, according to the latest data by the CDC. And we take this time to honor the lives of those who are in this community. We take this time to bring information, awareness, to give all of us opportunities and ways that we can be better community members in cooperation with those who may learn differently than us, from those who may perform differently than us, but are every much as worthy and deserving of respect and humanity as anybody else. It's no news for those of you who have been following me for a while that I am a mom of a now young adult who is on the autism spectrum and thriving, thankfully. We've been on this journey for 17 years now, and I will share a bit more about that a little later on in the program. But for now, I want to bring on fellow autism mom, fellow lawyer, fellow civil rights advocate, and just all around, queen of badassery, my dear friend, Areva Martin, ESQ.
Hi, Monique. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for doing this story, this focus today of your show, given the state of our country, given the state of what we are witnessing as autism moms, as autism advocates. So I just wanted to say thank you. And you use the word humanity in your opening. And that's it. It sums it up in a nutshell. We are talking about the humanity of people. And that seems to be a lost concept on those that have been elected and appointed to represent this country.
Well, you're right about it, Areva. And of course, we'll get into all of it. But before we do, I just want to say, again, this is, I don't know how many years now we've been having this conversation and combining efforts to bring awareness together. I have my candle here from the very good work that we did last year. And I know your special needs network is doing wonderful things and continuing to grow and serve more and more people all the time. And that really is what it's about. You saw areas where our federal government, where our school systems, where all of our regular things that are supposed to be the safeties and catch the gaps, where they weren't doing it, but you stepped up and started doing it yourself. So you're one of our sheroes in all of this.
Well, thank you so much for that. And, Monique, what's so interesting about the new CDC report that just came out this week is that the incidence, the number of kids being diagnosed keeps growing. I know when my son Marty was diagnosed, and I'm sure you're thinking the same about your son, I had some expectation that we would see the numbers shrink. And it's been the opposite. Every time the CDC comes out with a new report about the numbers, where it's done a study, those numbers keep rising. I remember when it was like 1 in 160 children would be diagnosed with autism. Now we're at 1 in 31 children. I mean, that is just mind-blowing, that statistic. That means if you're in a classroom, just your typical public school classroom, has 30 kids, right?
Yeah.
One kid in that classroom is going to have every school across this nation. You can, think of, that's a way to, kind of conceptualize what that number means.
Yes, and some of it they believe is because of increased ability to diagnose, not just to diagnose sooner, but the broader ability to be able to be in community and detect autism. Because many years ago, people were called different, special, all kinds of things that likely were in the spectrum somewhere, but were not officially diagnosed. So I think that that has something to do with it. But I think also, obviously, the one area I'll agree with persons who shall remain nameless, but I'm going to play the clip in a little bit. But the one area I agree is that we are seeing this continued uptick, and that it is different than other civilized nations. It is different than other places around the world. So there has to be something going on in this country that is not going on elsewhere. And it ain't vaccines. But yes, we do have some numbers. I don't want to, I've got some charts with numbers on. I don't want to show it quite yet, but I want to talk to you first about what we are seeing with the Department of Education, because we know that under Trump, they are looking to completely gut the Department of Education. Thousands of people have already been fired. The Department of Ed building is like a hollow shell right now. The funds that are supposed to go to things like paraeducators, special needs programming in high school, all of those things are in jeopardy right now. And the lawsuits are flying into the courtroom in order to figure all this out. What can you tell us?
Well, it's dire. And I think that's the word we just have to embrace. As difficult as this is, it's a very dire situation. And federal funding for special education programs critical for states around the country. Monique, a lot of people think that it is the quote so-called blue states, the woke states, the democratic states that benefit the most from the federal funding that is available for education. And that's contrary to the truth. The truth is it's mostly red states, it's southern states, states where we have large populations of not just Black people, but poor white people. Those are the states that benefit the most from federal funding. So those states' programs, their education programs, will suffer tremendously with the gutting of our Department of Education. The federal Department of Education plays a critical role in ensuring that kids with special needs, not just autism, but a range of special healthcare needs, get the resources and services that are mandated by federal law. Again, not a handout. There is federal legislation, federal statutes that dictate that children with special needs have an entitlement to federal programs, again, by legislation that was passed by our Congress and our Senate and signed by former presidents. So it's really, really scary to me. As an advocate, I've talked to families around the country who are worried about what will happen to their children if their school districts lose that critical federal funding. So everyone needs to be paying attention to this, again, and it's not just for special ed kids. I mean, there are, children in schools across this country, Title I schools that, service kids whose families fall below a certain income level. Those children, those schools will be impacted as well. So we're talking about the gutting of our educational system. And we can only imagine the long-term impact of having kids who are not prepared to face the world and to face the competitive nature of our global economy.
Right, because one of the things that makes significant difference, probably that first of all, it's early diagnosis, early recognizing of the symptoms of autism and diagnosis makes for better outcomes, makes for more ability for students to be able to thrive. And then the services, the wraparound services that they're getting at home, in school, and as they get older, as you and I have children who are now young adults, the ability for them to be in community, all of these things are being handled by public schools. I went to a rally that at the Department of Education union presidents were sponsoring, that was at Capitol Hill, and they were talking about how 80% of children, typically developing children, are in public schools. 90-something% of children with special needs are in public schools, depending on getting a free and appropriate public education. And this administration desires to gut that, leave it up to the states, take the money. They're taking all of these very aggressive, illegal measures against our children. But here's the thing, Areva, against that backdrop, where they're trying to take away all this funding, where they're trying to get rid of paraeducators, where they're putting all of these programs in jeopardy, this week, during Autism Awareness Month, the head of the Health and Human Services Department, Robert Kennedy Jr., had this to say.
This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes, they'll never hold a job, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write a poem, they'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it.
Why don't you go first? Because I only allowed myself to play that one more time so that we could all, and those who are going to watch this program, could level set with the same amount of information. But my level of fury at the generalities, at the ignorance, at the lack of information, I mean, just the wrong-headedness of this man who heads Medicaid, Medicare, CDC, NIH, is like, I'm way up here on it. So you go, Areva.
Yeah, Monique, all I can say is this is what we should expect when you put a second-rate environmental lawyer in charge of health and human services. This man is not a scientist. He has no educational training, no experiential training, nothing that would qualify him to be in the position and have the kind of power and control that you just articulated that he has over our health. And on top of that, he has peddled in conspiracy theories for decades. So on top of not having the experience, the training, the education, he got sucked into a community of, conspiracy theorists around autism, became the leader in some ways of those conspiracies, disseminated so much disinformation, so much harmful information. And it was predictable that he would carry that baggage into the position that he now holds. So as angry as I am with him, I'm also furious with the Republicans on the committees that challenged him, that didn't challenge him, I should say. There's a physician, a senator out of Louisiana, a medical doctor, who early on in the process expressed some kind of doubts and reservations about having Kennedy in this position because he knows as a trained physician that this man is dangerous. Yet he succumbed to the pressure and he voted to approve him. So all of the Republicans, and let's be clear, autism doesn't just impact Black and brown families like ours. It impacts disproportionately white families. So there are white Republicans, grandpas, grandmothers, fathers, and mothers who are also impacted by this man's ignorance. So the fact that they have been sitting quietly by, we haven't seen an outrage from the right, from the MAGA crowd, is equally disturbing. And we need to be calling out those senators that confirmed him, calling out Donald Trump, who appointed him, because they are equally at fault for what is happening and these attacks on our community.
And so many people were saying, I mean, obviously people in the autism community were outraged, but others were saying, well, he's discussing people with severe symptoms and et cetera and so on. And I really had two areas where I was most incensed. One is you claim to want to do something to help the autism community, but you work for a man who's gutting the very programs that would help the autism community to help people to survive and do things like be able to pay their own bills, be able to pay taxes, be able to do their daily cares of life, hold down a job, have relationships, et cetera, and so on. The things he's claiming in sweeping generalities never happen. But then two, it's that he's so stuck, like you said, in the junk science, no science lane that puts bad information out there to families. And I know what it's like. I still remember what it's like to be that new young mom, firstborn child, regressing. You had words, then lost words, not sure what was happening, looking for any reason, looking for any cure, looking for any help. And when people are loud, even when they're wrong, it draws people into that web. And that's very, very dangerous for our global safety and health. But I want to put some stats on the board because our head of HHS was as wrong as any person could be. I think we have first a page that's got some autism information on it. If we can share that now, producers, and I will take Areva through a part of it and we can go through it with our viewers, because we know that 1 in 31 children, as I've already said, have autism, and that is increased in 1 in 45 adults. But what I'm looking at is that diagnosis and early intervention is still hugely important. And that's what happens with the programs that the Department of Education provides for diagnosis and early intervention to happen. This is something that happens in our school systems. This is something that happens in early education programs. And if we could go on to the next slide.
Monique, can I just comment on that slide?
Sure.
It's interesting that slide says that autism prevalence is lower among white children. That's an interesting stat because I hadn't seen that stat before. That stat actually has the incidence rate higher amongst Asian Pacific Islanders and then African Americans, I guess at 3.7%. That's an interesting statistic. And if that's true, if that's accurate, I retract what I just said in terms of the disproportionality of white families, because this stat seems to belie that and seems to suggest that white families are less impacted.
Well, no, because even though we have a higher proportional impact, and the impact for Asian and Pacific Islander communities has a higher proportional impact, but by the sheer numbers, because they're just, because we're still the minority, there are so many more. I think there are millions more white children who are affected by autism, but their percentage rate is what's lower. And that higher percentage rate in our community, we know, is due to early diagnosis or lack thereof. It goes on to say, I think somewhere else in the slide that, I think it's right. No, go to the prior page. It says the average age of diagnosis for children in lower income households is 4.7 years compared to 5.2 years in higher income households. So we're looking at, frankly, poverty. We're looking at minority communities, still always, like everything else, Areva, getting hit the hardest. But
and that number hasn't changed. I mean, that stat there about the late diagnosis of Black and brown and low income kids, that number has been static. So we've not moved the needle on early diagnosis in any significant way. And I do want to just go back. Well, I made that statement, Monique, because you and I care about facts and we want to be accurate. A lot of folks don't. We're in this world where people just say whatever, even if it's not true. So that's why I wanted to correct myself on that. So, but thank you. You're right. The sheer number of white kids is definitely much greater because they're just, more white folks in the U.S. than Black. But you also, you made a statement about this how people are responding to this. And I just think it's so important. Those that are trying to excuse away what R.F. Kennedy said by saying, oh, well, he's just talking about those, quote unquote, low functioning. First of all, there's no excuse. You are the head of the health department for this country. So first of all, this whole concept of low functioning, high functioning, if you're not entrenched in this community, you won't even know what that means. So the average person listening to him would not have made this artificial distinction that somebody's coming behind him trying to clean up his mess. So let's not.
I don't even think he's making an artificial distinction. Can you put up the second slide, George? Because I think he's really just lacking in facts. If you look at the second one, look at employment, Areva. Look. Nearly 60% of people with autism in the United States are employed after receiving vocational rehabilitation services, the same damn services that the government is now trying to cut. When our community has those services, they are employed, they are working, they are being taxed, they are paying taxes. And when the first stat where it says only 21% of people with disabilities, that is the larger disabilities community, including autism. But autism specifically, which is what he was talking about in the video, 60% of them are working. I want to look also at education. 70% toward the top. 70% of autistic students in the United States graduate with a diploma versus 86% of all students. So him saying, and I mean a diploma as opposed to a special certificate, which is when you're a little bit further along, more severe in the spectrum, you may have a special certificate. But even with that, you have opportunities to go on to community college, to junior college. So he was just flat freaking wrong.
Yeah, and I did a video speaking to this because, as you know, especially in these network and nonprofit I started in California, we employ people. So when he says they don't pay taxes, I'm like, wrong, dude. They pay taxes because anybody that has a job in the U.S., that has a W-2, your taxes are being withheld and paid to the federal government. So this notion that somehow people, will never pay taxes, never go on a date. I was like, dude, watch Love on the Autism Spectrum. I mean, there's so many ways that we can debunk all of the disinformation in that speech. It's just mind-boggling that someone would get up at a podium without the facts, that the receipts that you brought today, not be aware of them and not reference them. And to make those statements is just so dangerous.
Yeah, and using it all for his own perch, for his own purposes, for his own little crusade. And the reason why, and I really wouldn't even be spending this much time talking about him, except for you are exactly right. When we have people in power who use political appointments for favors and cronies, the real inclusion, the real DEI, the real favor system where you get into positions that you don't deserve at all. This is what happens, and it's real lives that are at stake because of it. And so I blame RFK Jr. for his own ignorance. I blame the legislature for their part in it. Trump certainly in making this ridiculous appointment. But Areva, what about the voters? Because these are voters in red states that are about to be slammed, and they're waking up every day figuring out, it's me too.
Yeah, I put a challenge out to the voters on my Facebook page saying, look, you all that voted for him, that continue to make excuse after excuse for all of the conduct. I mean, this is just one of many examples, Monique, of outrageous conduct, outrageous statements that we've seen come from this administration. Asking them, look at the people in your family, look at the people in your neighborhood who are on the autism spectrum. Do you really want to say to them that your humanity does not matter? That the head of our Health and Human Services Department thinks that the world would be better off without you? I mean, the way he described individuals with autism was like someone saying, we would be better off if these people, these children, these young adults didn't even exist. It reminded me of the early, 20th century eugenics, where if you didn't meet the certain Aryan white criteria, you were disposable. You had no value in our society. And why are we talking about people based on what they can and cannot do? Everybody has worth. Everybody has meaning. Every life has potential. And you and I know, and if he did any research, he would know early intervention, early diagnosis, intensive services. I have a young man that was working for me at Special Needs Network, 2 degrees from a prestigious university here in California, Loyola Marymount University. His brother, both on the spectrum, his brother, a degree, who now travels the world doing missionary work. So this notion that these people are worthless is so just wrong. I mean, it's just factually wrong. And then it's just so inhumane to talk about humans. And then to say that kids on the autism spectrum tear families apart. What? I mean, my son has brought our family closer. I know the thousands and thousands of families I meet through Special Needs Network. Families have become closer, more loving, more empathetic, more accepting.
Yeah.
And then, let's talk about this one. This is the Kennedy family, the biggest champions of Special Olympics, of special needs. So can you imagine
but that's why his whole family
people are thinking right now?
That's why his whole family is embarrassed by him. I mean, that's exactly why. I think we have, George, do we have a video from the young woman on the spectrum? That can be the last one we show.
I'm autistic and also have ADHD, what the cool kids these days are calling ADHD. I've had jobs and work since I was 16 years old and have successfully been self-employed for over 10 years now. I'm also the intergenerational glue that helps keep my family together. I'm married and have incredibly enriching, beautiful friendships. It is true that I do not use the bathroom unassisted because I have a Velcro dog that insists on being my personal pee guard. But I do pay exponentially higher taxes than Tesla or half of these billionaire corporations paid in the last decade.
Right on to her. Just speaking her truth. And there's so many young autism advocates just like her who are employed, have relationships, have jobs, pay their taxes, have figured out how to go to the bathroom with or without a support animal, and are living independently. And again, I just go back to the people who are trying to make excuses for him and say, oh, he didn't mean this, he didn't mean that. He meant every word of it. And if he has any brains left in his head after all the experiences he has had, he would have to recognize the kind of harm that this would do to the community, which is why we've seen this tremendous backlash on social media.
Well, we just have a couple of minutes left, Areva. I see so many people making comments in the chat, and I was trying to figure out, I don't know why, I look really blurry to me, so I was trying to go and figure out why, but we'll just keep going. They can hear your comments and see your pretty face, so I'll let that be enough. But they're saying they saw me. Don said hi, by the way. I was on Don Lemon for Hot Topics today, and this was one of the things I shared with him, that we were going to be talking about this. So some of us are landing here from there, but I see people who are in families with children who are on the spectrum, autism moms out here like IVD. Thank you so much for watching. You guys, please remember to like and subscribe so we can keep doing this. But I feel like what that young woman described is, I mean, that's goals for autism moms who are still on their journey. But it also shows the exact opposite in terms of possibilities and outcomes of what RFK Jr. was talking about. So with all of that said, and with what we're looking at with the Department of Education, like what guidance and call to action can you give for people in our community or people who care about people in our community?
I think the most important thing people can do is to continue to use their voices, to keep speaking out. All the folks that are responding to this show, the folks that have responded to your post, my post, Holly Robinson Pete made a post. So many autism moms across this country have been responding with their own, talk back videos, I'll call them. Keep doing that because it has a powerful impact. Write to your congressman, write to your senator, let them know that RFK is dangerous, that his vitriol is dangerous to our community. Write to them about the importance of maintaining a federal Department of Education. And then most importantly, if you are not already registered to vote, if you're not involved in getting other people registered to vote, we have to change the trajectory of our leadership in this country. We will have an opportunity to do so at the national level in the midterms, but there are local elections happening every day in every community around this country. Folks have got to get engaged. Monique, you won't believe this. I interviewed a guy on my show about a couple of weeks ago, and he told me he voted for Trump. And when I was digging deep about why, he told me, well, I didn't really know about Project 2025. I didn't really know about this, and I didn't know. And it's like, okay, people, time out. We can no longer afford to say we didn't know and we just made some kind of, arbitrary choice. Our lives are at stake. Our kids' lives are at stake. Our future, our financial future, the air that we breathe, everything that we have fought so hard for in this moment is at stake. And we all have an obligation. If you can get on social media and post comments, you can figure out how to read, how to have somebody read it to you if you can't read, and learn about what these candidates say they're going to do. Believe them, don't make excuses for them, and then make choices that are aligned with your values and what is important to you as a family and as a community. And that's what we all have to do in this moment: stand in solidarity, push back, continue to resist, call out the BS, and figure out a way to take our country back, because the direction we are headed into is incredibly, incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, and we're a young democracy, and these are some unwanted growing pains. I mean, and I ask people all the time, how's your sexism and your racism working out for you now? I mean, you certainly had a better choice. Let's call a thing a thing. I think if people would get real honest about what they did and why they really voted, then we could get further faster, because then they could look at the reality of this Trump administration and what a nightmare it is, and just acknowledge the error of their own ways and come up with a plan. And I think that's
agree to
people,
change.
Yeah.
Admit it and change.
Yes. Minute quit it. That is it. But where can we find Special Needs Network, or even where can we find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on all things social at Areva Martin. You can also find Special Needs Network, where we have just a plethora of big word for a lot. Have a lot of free services, free resources. You can go to snnla.org. That's the website. You can follow Special Needs Network at SNNLA. Again, follow the conversation, be a part of this. Everybody knows somebody on the spectrum. So even if it hasn't impacted your family directly, you have a coworker, you have a neighbor, you have somebody that has been impacted, and we need all hands on deck. This is all of our fight. This isn't your fight or my fight. This is everybody's fight.
Thank you, Areva Martin, ESQ. We appreciate
Thank you. All right. See you soon, my friend.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You all, Areva is invaluable to not just the autism community or legal community, but to the country and to the world. So if you were not already following her, please do, and support the work that she is doing, especially the work for Special Needs Network in LA. They are providing valuable services to target communities and changing lives every single day. So as you can tell, I'm a fan. She's got a supporter for life. I hope that you've learned something during the program. I hope we've helped you to make it make sense. Please go check out at 2 p.m. on Don Lemon's channel. The Week with Monique will drop at 2 p.m. I switched gears. I'm not talking about autism awareness for today's segment. I am talking about the constitutional crisis that we either are in or are headed for, and what we need to do about it. So I'm sitting deep in the pocket in sweet spot lawyer lane of this former trial lawyer turned talk to you on TV person to explain where we are, where we're going, what it means. So go check that out on Don Lemon's channel. And then please subscribe here at Monique Pressley channel. Like videos, share videos. That's how we keep going. This is independent media. We depend on you. Thanks so much. Until Monday, noon Eastern, stay safe out there.